All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Just wanted to go over a couple of housekeeping items, and then we'll roll into the information. So we're so happy that you're all here to learn a little bit more about IRIS today. We're going to provide information, and then we have allowed time at the end for question and answer. I'm battling a little bit of a cough, so if I occasionally go on mute, I apologize. And I also have a child at home with me, so a couple of caveats in alignment with our housekeeping there. If my 7-year-old pops in here, his name's Emmett. He's a pretty good kid. I'm hoping that the movie that he's watching is entertaining. So I'm going to let my colleagues introduce themselves. Tracy?
Yes, thanks, Erin. Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Tracy Malaire. I'm a child and adult psychiatrist. I've been with IRIS about 4 years. I started in a clinical position and took on an admin role about a year into my tenure at IRIS, and I'm now the medical director of ambulatory services. And I'm really excited to talk with you all today. I'll pass it to Aisha.
Hi, I'm Aisha Hamoud. I am the Director of Acute Care for Clinical Hiring for Acute Care and Scheduled Services. So we cover enterprise community settings. So, and I'm excited to answer any questions that you have.
Thanks, and I'm Erin Shetman. I am our Director for Clinical Hiring for Therapy Services. So my team functions within the therapy space, finding, hiring, and placing LCSWs and LMFTs all across the country. I've been with IRIS for about 3.5 years, and I'm excited to answer any questions and give you more information about IRIS today. So this will be recorded for you to refer back to in the future. There is a question, an opportunity to submit questions, and as I mentioned, we will answer those toward the end. We've allowed plenty of time for that because we know that that information is important to you as well. So hopefully some of the information we provide will answer those questions as we move through it. And let's go ahead and get started. Get everything pulled up here. There we go. Oh, well, there are our names: Erin, Aisha, and Dr. Tracy Malaire. So just a little bit of background about IRIS. What you see over here on the right-hand side of your screen is the yellow house. It was actually the first official office for IRIS Telehealth. We were founded in 2013 by Dr. Tarek Shaheen, and he's a child psychiatrist, had done some training in Virginia, saw the benefits of telehealth and how it could reach populations in new and innovative ways and really bring care to underserved populations. Our overall goal is to function as a medical group, that's how we function, and to create continuity of care for underserved populations. Most of the people that work at IRIS have a background in behavioral health and understand how that continuity of care for underserved populations, every population, but we mostly serve underserved populations, that continuity of care can really make an impact on someone's longitudinal wellness. And so that's our overall goal, is getting to know our clinicians really well, and on the other side, getting to know our partner groups really well, and then bringing the two together. We don't want to plug and play with clinicians. We want to make sure that we are looking at a variety of factors when we're matching clinicians with partner groups. And we'll dive into that here a little bit later. So let's talk a little bit about the work toward Joint Commission. We have become Joint Commission accredited. We just actually were reaccredited, and we take that very seriously. We align with the standards of the Joint Commission and ensure that our clinicians are provided the support, they're functioning in an environment that aligns with their values and their needs, and that we are functioning at the highest level of care possible. So to provide you a little bit of information on the company, we've grown significantly. The kind of proof of efficacy in telehealth. We function 100% virtually, And since our founding, we have grown to have 367 providers, and that's a combination of psychiatrists, PMHNPs, and LCSWs, as you see here. And we have grown into 35 states. So what we're looking for really is, reaching as many lives as we can and impacting communities in a positive way. And you can see that that's happening through that clinician satisfaction being at 96%. We work really hard to make sure that our clinicians are well supported and feel as if they are a part of a team, and that they're an extension of the care team that they're working with there down on the ground. So if we look at these statistics, we are 100% behavioral health. That has been our focus since we were founded in 2013, and that will continue to be our focus. We really have found a place where we can make a big impact. And I know I say it a lot and I sound like a broken record, but I think we all really do care a lot about the work that the clinicians do. And every time I think about a clinician who's placed with a partner group, I'm thinking about their quality of life, but my team, and I know Aisha's team as well, we're always thinking about the impact that the clinicians that we're placing are going to have on the community. And that's really what drives us to continue to do this work and really support our clinicians well, because we know that happy clinicians are providing great care to the populations that we're lucky enough to serve. So when we're looking at provider types, we started with psychiatrists and psychiatric nurse practitioners, and then in mid-2020 we expanded to include LCSWs as the demand for therapy started to increase. And as we're continuing to see expansion in the therapy world, we have now started to include LMFTs, and that is just kind of a vision of how we innovate and how we continue to push forward to provide care to populations, is taking a look at what our partner groups are asking for, and then also taking a look at what clinicians want to be doing and the work that they want to do to impact communities, and seeing if it's a way that we can expand, which Aisha will talk a little bit more about as she talks about opportunities at IRIS. So some of the perks. We provide all of your equipment, so laptop, secondary monitor, external speaker and microphone, and then we have excellent IT support. And I can speak from experience, our IT support is top notch. I do things to computers that I can't even explain, and they can always fix it. They're incredibly patient with me. And they can always step in and help me troubleshoot something. So I think we're really lucky to have the team that we do. Not only do we have IT support, but we also have operations support. Our clinical operations managers are a liaison between our clinician and our partner groups, and they step in to help troubleshoot things. They step in to support. They're in consistent communication with our clinicians, and on the other side also with our partner groups, so that they can help support clinicians in their day-to-day work. As far as benefits go, I think one of the great things that we have is CME and CEU credits. So we support clinicians as they are maintaining their licensure, and we also have a full med staff services team who help alongside that. They are some of the most organized people, and they're excellent at their jobs. So we're so lucky to have them as well. When it comes to work-life balance, one of the greatest things that we hear is that clinicians are able to really think about the schedule that works well for them. And our teams work really hard to find a site and a schedule that aligns with those preferences. And does that mean that, you live in Pacific time zone and you want to work really, really early in the morning, and you're looking at East Coast time, or vice versa, you prefer a later start and you're okay working a little bit later into the afternoon or evening, maybe living in Eastern time zone and looking at Pacific. We really want to help clinicians find that work-life balance that allows for less compassion fatigue, that allows for better engagement in your personal life, and ultimately leads to really high quality patient care. Another thing that I think is really important is that we have Dr. Muller, we have Dr. Milam, and people who have a clinical background and a background in psychiatry and have done the work that our clinicians do, leading our company and leading our medical group. We're really lucky to have really talented people leading our medical group that understand the struggles and understand the challenges that come along with the work that people do in the psychiatric and therapeutic spaces, to provide that support and guidance, not only on the corporate side, but more importantly on the clinical side to our clinicians. Those are just invaluable resources that we have here at IRIS, and I know all of us on the corporate side learn from our medical leadership all the time, and we're so lucky to have them to support our clinicians. Well, I will talk about opportunities here at IRIS, and we'll kind of talk through this until Aisha comes to join us. Is she here? Aisha? Nope. Okay. All right. Okay. I'll just go ahead and run through Aisha's slides. It looks like she's pretty frozen there. Okay, so in talking about acute care, working as one of our acute care providers, you're paired with a care team known as, they're called a dedicated care pod that works across a group of our partner health systems. So at each facility, we'll work with you to ensure that you get to know all the medical staff that you'll be working with, from the doctors in the ED leadership, nurses, technicians who will help set you up to provide virtual care to patients every day. And then you're also closely working with our telehealth care coordinators. Internally, we refer to them as TCCs. They are, again, I say I'm lucky to work with all these people, and I sounds like a broken record, but really we have just exceptionally talented people that we're lucky enough to work with here at IRIS. So our telehealth care coordinators are kind of, running the show and helping people out and making sure that people are where they need to be and care is getting to the clients that need it. So they field consult requests from our partner health systems, and then our acute care operations team make sure our clinicians have all the resources and support necessary to do your job and really get to align with one of our values, which is live your work and love your work, which is what we're always all striving for. So that's our acute care space. Within ambulatory care, again, this comes back to that clinical operations manager that I referred to earlier. So you're working closely with your clinical operations manager, your clinical hiring manager, and then med staff services to find opportunities that align with your preferences. So we're looking at a variety of factors. So population, experience, ages, diagnoses, setting, a lot of different things that we're looking at to find the right placement for someone. And they help to match your goals and your criteria to the appropriate site. And then also your clinical operations manager and your med staff services coordinator are helping to manage administrative tasks necessary to get you set up within your organization. So payer paneling, internal and external credentialing, licensure, et cetera. All of that support is provided by IRIS, by, again, a very skilled team. And then they help to connect you with your team at your matched clinic to make sure that you walk in on your first day, on your first day, and you feel prepared and ready to roll to see that first client. And throughout your time as a provider with IRIS, you are connected with your clinical operations manager, your COM, as that liaison between yourself and the clinic. And they make sure that you have the resources that you need, that you have the support that you need, and that you're continuing to love the work that you're doing on site there with our partner group. So I'm going to go through a little bit. Oh, that really skipped ahead, didn't it? There we go. Core values. I'm going to go through our core values, and just a little background on these. This was something that when the company was started, the core values were created in alignment with the vision that the team had for where they wanted the company to go. So Tariq, our founder, Dr. Tariq Shaheen, he really valued each of these and had conversations with the people that were working at Iris at the time. And what's interesting is I've worked for companies and hospital systems where we hear the values, but we don't talk about them a whole lot. Our values get discussed often, and we bring them up often. So I'm going to go through each of these. So number one is people over all else. And this is not only when we're talking about the clinical care that we provide, but that also aligns with the corporate culture that we strive for. And our medical group is included in that. And so we want to make sure that we are valuing the lives of our clinicians and their job satisfaction over all else, and making sure that our clinicians have what they need to do their job well. And what we need in the clinical space to do our jobs well is not always the right equipment and the fanciest camera. A lot of times it's that personal support and someone that you can call, your clinical operations manager, a leader, someone who you can lean on and have conversations with. And so we always lean back on the idea that we are strong as a team when we're putting people over all else. So this is one that I think is maybe our favorite. We talk about this one a lot, but suck less every day. We say it's sledding, and essentially how I interpret suck less every day is that we can fail fast. We can see something that maybe isn't going right and we're like, oh, let's change that. Let's switch it up. Let's figure out how to do that a little bit better. And we're able to continually improve, but improve together. And so creating that safe workspace where we can take feedback and make changes and help our clinicians provide the best care possible, and make sure that they know that they are well supported. We talk about this one a lot and often nudge each other and say, hey, let's sled on this moment, and how can we do this better next time? And we all really value this value a lot. Execution is queen, or execution is king. We are always out to execute well, and it's always our goal to really accomplish real results, but accomplish real results with grace and with accuracy to the best of our ability. And so there's a lot of communication that goes into executing things well, and that rolls right back into people over all else, where we're communicating about the work that we're doing and talking through the experiences that we're having so that we can continue to execute really well. So we bring ideas to the table and we follow them through. And then again, we get to sled on all of those. Be quick, but don't hurry. This is one of those that we lean into to make sure that we are making mindful decisions as we move forward. So we're moving as fast as we can, but we don't want to rush. And so we want to be quick, but we don't want to hurry things. And so we want to execute quickly. We want to make impact in communities quickly and mindfully, but we don't want to hurry through those, because we always want to make sure that we're leaning back on that first value of putting people over all else. So we talk about this one a lot, and you can kind of hear how these are all individual, but they're all really tied together in how we talk about the work that we do. We talk about how we support our clinicians so that ultimately they can support the patients that we get to serve. And then we have love your work, live your work. This is one that I think we're seeing more and more be discussed in that work-life balance. We want to love the work that we're doing, and have it be a meaningful part of the lives that we lead, because when we get to impact the lives of others in a positive way, we ultimately are impacting ourselves in a positive way. And that really is what love your work, live your work comes down to. we get to really make a meaningful impact on the world around us. So those are our values. And I know that we've had some questions rolling in. We're excited to get those answered. So I'm going to hand it over to Dr. Muller to head into our Q&A.
Sure, thanks, Erin, and thanks for all that information. And I particularly want to echo the values. It has been striking to me how much that we do talk about them, and compared to other organizations, I would agree that they're not often talked about. And I mean, we talk about, you know, SLED moments and people over all else frequently. So I think that bears repeating, that I've really found that to be true, both as a clinician and then working administratively at IRIS, that we are very connected to those values. And Aisha did send her apologies that she got bumped off, so we will do our best without her. And I know some of the questions we may have sort of covered, they were rolling in as Erin was speaking. But one of them was, our sessions 100% virtual. And absolutely, we are 100% telepsychiatry behavioral health company. That's all we do is behavioral health, and do it remotely. We do have questions sometimes if there's a hybrid approach, but we are exclusively a virtual company. That's not to say once in a while, if someone is in the area where their clinic is and they want to say hi or stop in, we've been known to hear those stories of those connections, which are wonderful. But people do work 100% from home. For our prescribing physicians, we make sure they're licensure and DEA or connected with where the clinic is, and therefore we don't run into any of issues with telepsychiatry standards. And that's been true for about the 10 years that we've been operating, which is amazing to say that it's been that long. Other questions: are hours set by the agency or the clinician? Which is a great question. And Erin, feel free to jump in at any time with some of these questions. I was just on an interview. Part of my day, I love doing provider interviews. And earlier today, someone asked the same question about schedules. And that's really why we dig in to understand, as Erin was saying, preferences of providers, what kind of hours, time zone, what is really going to fit into your life. And we figure that out with you and then the clinical setting well ahead of time, so that expectations are really clear about what hours worked are, because we really focus on that work-life balance. We don't want our providers to ever feel like they're in a setting where there is an ever-increasing workday. We know the work is hard enough, and we really work to eliminate barriers, whether it be schedule confusion or not enough admin time, whatever it may be. We really want to understand the schedule before you start, and so that you can hit the ground running and have the best work-life balance possible. Let's see, other questions. Are clinicians assisting with obtaining licensure in other states? That's a great question. And I think when I applied, I really had no idea all the support systems that were in place at IRIS. And I remember asking it, you know, if we identify a really great setting that's not in the state where I have a license, you all are going to help me get that licensure before I start? And the answer is yes, that if there is a identified setting that is a great fit for you, our medical credentialing department is amazing, and we'll make sure that all the credentialing aligns before you start. And they're really good about giving feedback. Again, this is be quick, but don't hurry. We want to make sure everything's aligned, but we need to give that the proper time and give the proper feedback so that people can make plans for when they start, giving them time to leave notice and transition as well. Other questions? What can we really good ones?
Tracy, I can talk through benefits really quick because I saw a couple of questions about
great.
Yeah. So we provide medical, dental, vision to, so hold on, let me take a step back. We have both W-2 and 1099 opportunities for our clinicians. W-2 starts at 30 hours. So from 24 to 29 hours, the only option is 1099. And then starting at 30 hours and up, you can either be 1099 or W-2, whatever works best for you. For all of our clinicians, so 1099 and W-2, we provide malpractice coverage through PRMS. We provide all of your equipment plus IT support, and we provide licensing and credentialing. So everyone falls into those three benefits. And then for our clinicians who are W-2, we have medical, dental, vision. We pay 75% for clinician and 50% for dependents. And I always like to celebrate our insurance. I have two small boys, and they love to push the boundaries of a health insurance plan, and this one stands strong. We have life insurance, short-term disability, a 401k with a 3.5% match, and then 4 weeks paid time off plus federal holidays. And then we have a home office expense account, and also that CME CEU expense account as well. And those benefits are available starting day one. So your first day working with your partner group, your benefits are active.
And I can jump in with a couple of questions that are a bit related. One is asking about, are there set hours or a set number of clients? This is such a good question. And there was also a question about, is there a productivity or billable expectation? And so that's why we're really clear about schedule and hours. And before we even think of matching someone to a clinical setting, we work long and hard to understand the clinical setting, the partner, make sure it's somewhere where we would all want to work and that their philosophies align with ours. And that includes how long is an intake, how long is a follow-up appointment, what hours is this provider needed. For outpatients, there's not generally expectations for call outside those hours. We know some folks have other positions, or you have a life you want to attend to, and we really try to protect that. So by knowing that, I'm going to come in at 9 and leave at 5, for example, or whatever my hours are, that's the plan. And you're paid an hourly rate through IRIS. We've also really studied the no-show rate because we need to make sure there is enough patient flow to warrant this schedule. So therefore, there's not a demand of productivity per se, or there's not a number of patients that one needs to see. The expectation is that the providers are work during their day. They have a schedule of patients depending on the level of care they're working, and that they're expected, to be busy during those hours and within the confines of our predetermined length of appointments. And beyond that, there's no other productivity expectations.
I wanted to address, I see an LCSW question in here about associate level therapist. Current state, we are not set up to employ associate level therapists. However, I see you mentioning BBS, so I'm assuming it's a California question. Once your exam has been passed, go ahead and apply, and we'll be excited to talk to you. Current state, we aren't able to employ ASWs, LMSWs, but once you're independently licensed, we'd love to start the conversation. Future state, fingers crossed that we're in a place to do that, but that's just not current state right now.
And I have another question that follows, not in current state. It's, do you hire physician assistants in psychiatry? Currently, we do not. Current state, we cannot hire physician assistants. We hire psychiatrists, nurse practitioners, and licensed clinical social workers. And there was another question about what is the demand for IRIS services in Maryland? While I could not give up-to-date information of the demand, I can say that my first clinical, when I applied to IRIS, my clinical position was with the Child Residential Center in Maryland. So definitely there are positions that come up. And And that would be a good question that along the way, clinical hiring can give information to candidates. We definitely look at candidate preference, where they want to work, where they currently have licensure, or maybe know the resources in the area and want to work where they have familiarity. So that's all information we take into consideration.
Mm-hmm. There's a question here about full-time versus part-time. Are we at the same one? And that kind of aligns with what Dr. Miller was referencing, that it really is your preference. So part-time versus full-time is going to align with the type of work that you want to be doing. So we start at 24 hours. And then for therapy services, we actually start at 40 hours a week. So it really is your preference and what schedule aligns best with your preferences and your needs.
There was a question. I'm an MD board certified in addiction medicine, but not a psychiatrist. Would I be a candidate? And again, falls under, I think, not current state, that our providers need to be psychiatrists, board certified psychiatrists for the locations that are requesting services right now.
And as far as therapy goes, again, that's preference. Typically speaking, well, not typically, there's nothing typical because it varies from site to site and clinician to clinician. So we have some sites that do more brief intervention therapies. So they'll say, you know, like, let's get clients in, we'll do, you know, 6, 8, 12 visits, and then we reassess. And then we have other sites that have a more longitudinal population where people come in for more concentrated visits, and then it's an ongoing therapeutic relationship. So it really varies based on the site that you're partnered with, the acuity of the population, and ultimately, and this applies to all of our clinicians, we lean back on your clinical expertise and knowing what your clients need and what they're going to benefit from when it comes to a therapeutic relationship.
And I saw a really good question that I hear from candidates a lot. What happens if the placement is not a good match? Which definitely, I understand the concern, wanting to make sure that you're enjoying your clinical placement. And I think it gets back to the satisfaction rate, which is the 96% provider satisfaction rate is so high. It takes me back every time I say it. And I think it's because our team does such a fabulous job, first understanding the scope of what's being asked in the clinical position, and then having the conversations with the providers about experience, preferences, what are you really looking for, and being quick but not hurrying to figure that all those pieces out to make sure that the clinical position is something that our providers would enjoy. Along the way, we have different conversations. There's opportunity for our providers to talk to the clinical setting, to hear firsthand from them along the way as we're really looking at clinical settings. I found that to be really helpful in making that final decision and understanding if the culture of the clinical setting would feel like a good fit for me. I know a lot of providers really benefit from that piece of the interview process and implementation process. And if along the way, if something unexpected happens with the clinical setting, that's why the team is here. That's why clinical operations managers checking in with the providers, just in making sure you have what you need. If there's any questions or changes or requests for change in schedule, which honestly happen quite rarely, but if they do, we want to make sure you have us to support you. So you have Iris working in parallel with the clinical setting, but we're advocating for you and making sure you have the supports you need and addressing any concerns in the clinical setting as they come up.
I want to address a question that just came in because I had the exact same thought when I first read our values. So this person asks, why we would have a value that is suck less every day. And when I joined Iris in 2019, I had the same thought. I was like, well, that's kind of a negative thing to say. And so I actually asked Tarek, our founder, about it. I was like, what's up with this? Like, this seems kind of negative, and I don't know if I align with that. And he explained it to me in a way that helped me, and I hope that I can share that with you in an eloquent way, the way that he did with me. But essentially, that it's thinking about things from a growth mindset, that we have the ability to grow and learn and modify every day to improve how we interact with each other, how we do our work, how we interact with our clients. And it's never settling into a fixed mindset that we feel like we don't have any room for improvement. And one thing that I really respect about Tarek, and that he'll tell you, is he always enters every room and assumes that he knows the least. And that's really where this suck less every day came from, is that he wanted, as he was building a company and as he was building a medical group, to enter every conversation and every encounter as if he had something to learn, and that he could continually grow. And that's really where that value was born from. And after I had that explanation, I was like, oh, okay, like I can get on board with that. I practice mindfulness. It's, a core tenet of my life. And to think about a company keeping a growth mindset at its core and in its values, that really spoke to me. So I just wanted to answer that because I saw that come through and I was like, oh man, I had that same exact thought 3.5 years ago. And then when Tarek explained it to me, I felt a whole lot better about it. And now I think about it every day as how can I improve as a teammate? How can I improve as a leader? How can I improve generally as a human, as a mom? And so it's that constant striving to learn and to grow.
Yeah, I would agree. I think when I saw that first, I was like, suck less, what's that about? When I was first learning about Iris, but I agree. Seeing it in practice, people talking about sled moments. I mean, I've been in meetings where that really empowers the group to, in a non-judgmental way, to think about how we can improve and continue to grow. So it's a fun value for sure, one we use very often.
We have a couple of questions about onboarding process and orientation. So we can't give a set answer on that because it is going to vary from site to site. We will align with the orientation and the onboarding of each of our partner groups. Typically, that orientation process is somewhere between 3 and 5 days, depending upon what type of group it is and what they already have in place. We want our clinicians to feel as if they're an extension of the care team. And so once you're matched with a partner group, you align with that orientation. And we're also looking at a variety of factors. So the length of time it takes to get licensed in the state, if a license is required, credentialing timeline, payer paneling, can we get you started in retro bill? So there's a variety of factors. So I can't always answer that with an exact answer until we have you matched with a partner group. But what I can tell you is that we're very communicative about your onboarding and your process through match, or from interview through match to implementation.
There was a question here if we do a referral bonus, and absolutely there is a referral bonus policy that was updated recently for employees of Iris that do refer other clinicians. There is a bonus that folks do receive, which is very nice. What other questions do we have? Questions.
Is it okay to hold multiple state licenses? Absolutely. I'm going to go back up through these and make sure.
That's what I'm doing, making sure we hit on all of them. Oh, I don't think we got to how long are contracts with agencies was the question. That's one I get a lot when I'm interviewing folks, and there isn't a length per se on the contract. What I will say is when we're vetting our clinical positions, we are looking for those settings that are looking for a long-term home for our providers and are wanting to fully integrate our providers as if they're working on the ground, as if they're applying on the ground. The only difference is they're obviously virtually doing their work. So we don't like maybe a locums company would do a certain length of contract. We don't do that. We tend to have partners and providers that are looking for a long-term fit. In our contracts, it does stipulate that if there is a change for whatever reason, if someone needs to leave a position, that you give 90 days notice. And we ask the clinic to do the same if for some unforeseen circumstance they could not continue working with Iris, that they give us 90 days. And from the provider standpoint, we want to make sure that we have time to find other employment for this provider. And we want to make sure if provider needs to leave, that the clinic has time to make sure those patients are cared for. But other than that, there are no time stipulations on our contracts for which people are committing a year or 2, 3 to a specific clinical site.
Tracy, there's a question here. Is acute care only doing ED consults in a medical setting, or does it include inpatient psych? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, that's a good question. So our acute care, we do have our on-demand sort of arm doing emergency room, ED consults, and acute care within the inpatient setting. So there could be consults on the medical floors. We also do have inpatient psychiatry, which is a separate kind of position that doesn't involve consults, the day-to-day traditional inpatient attending physician model. So we actually do both.
One thing that I didn't mention earlier that I think is important for our clinicians to know, and there were a couple of questions about accessing records and like schedules, et cetera. So our clinicians who are in scheduled services are dropping into, well, I guess everyone, but I'm thinking about having a schedule. In acute care, you're probably not going to have a whole lot of predictability in your schedule aside from being busy. But on the scheduled services side, we are dropping into the EMR native to the site. So whatever they're using there on the ground is what our clinicians will use. You do get that training from the partner group to make sure that you have a good grasp of the EMR. And then alongside that, you also are using their scheduling software. And then you're also using the video platform that they have there on the ground. So we ensure that there is an infrastructure within the site to support our clinician before we even move forward in conversations with the partner group, that they have that infrastructure, which after 2020, most groups do have an infrastructure for telehealth, and so we're able to easily drop into that. So you have access to the relevant records for that patient that you're going to be seeing. And then you also have the ability to communicate with your team on the ground, take a look at your calendar for the following day, just as if it was an office you were going into to prepare for your upcoming day, but you just happen to not be on site there. You're treating clients virtually. So I wanted to touch on that because I think that that's a really big piece, is that you don't have a whole lot of extra technology to deal with. You're dropping right into that EMR and that whatever the revenue cycle is that they're utilizing, so that you have direct access to all the information necessary to provide high quality care. And then there were a couple of questions that are relevant to clinical hiring, Tracy, that I'll take really quick. So if the facility, or like if the contract isn't working out, you know, someone's placed somewhere and they're dissatisfied, we work really hard to make sure that that is not the case. We want to do our job right the first time. But again, that comes back to sledding. We don't always get it right the first time. And so we take a step back and start to look at other options for that clinician. Sometimes, is it the population, or is it the schedule, or whatever it might be? Is it a problem that we can solve in working with our partner groups? Or is it something that is so hardwired into the function of the group that it can't be solved for? And in that case, you work closely with your clinical operations manager to solve those problems. Oftentimes clinical hiring steps back in to have conversations, and so you're well supported if that happens. We don't like to move people around because we want that continuity of care, but we understand sometimes we get it wrong. We don't get it wrong very often, but sometimes we do, and those conversations are individual to each situation. And then there was another one. I need to think about this question because I don't know that I understand it. So Tracy, I'll turn it back over to you to answer.
Yeah, sure. And in thinking of your previous answer about helping someone move to a different site, I can think of an example that a clinician was a certain level of care actually with us for long term, and then decided she really missed a different level of care. And, you know, we had plenty of time and talked it over and ultimately transitioned her to where she felt her heart really was. So definitely we work with providers as those things occur. Other questions I frequently get about malpractice. Iris does, that is a benefit, provide malpractice. And I frequently get asked about non-competes for those that work part-time with us, especially. And I started as a part-time clinician. I can say that Iris really supports providers seeing patients wherever they want to see them. That is our mission. I think the only stipulation in our non-compete is you don't take the same position, you know, that you got through Iris. You don't sort of go around Iris and then take that position directly with that specific clinical setting, but you can work down the street, you can have another position, you can do other telepsych. Our mission is, yeah, to have patients seen, so the non-compete does not get in folks' way at all. That's a question I get a lot.
I think I have understanding of the question. Our clinicians do not have to relocate to the state that they are placed within. So if you live in, I'll use myself as an example. I live in Kansas. And if I wanted to work a schedule on the East Coast, I would not have to move to Pennsylvania to work with Geisinger. I could gain licensure in the state of Pennsylvania while I maintain my home state license. I could gain that licensure in the state of Pennsylvania and provide that virtual care in Pennsylvania. So you do not have to be, you do not have to relocate for that. As far as frequency of meetings,
I'm just looking at the same question.
that varies really based on site, based on support needs, and based on clinician. So I know Tracy, Tom, Dawn, Marie, I'm missing someone. Courtney are always available for, you know, a call to go over something if necessary. And then our clinicians are, as we've mentioned, integrated into the part of the care team there on the ground. So we work really hard to make sure that they're attending regularly scheduled meetings there on the ground. I said that wrong. You're not going to the meetings, they're on the ground. But you're in attendance virtually to make sure that you're gaining the same information and support that everyone there on the ground has.
Oh, we got a question. Do you have to live in the United States? And yes, our providers do need to live in the United States in order to bill Medicare, Medicaid, which many of our mental health centers rely on. You need to be living in the US, compliance reasons. And I think we have a couple more minutes for questions if folks have other questions. I can say what impressed me as entering IRIS as a clinician and then switching more to administrative role. I think I didn't have a full appreciation for how many people were on my team, making sure that I could just focus on what I was doing, which is exactly what my experience was when I was in a clinical role, to make sure schedules and IT and so much goes into the clinical settings, scoping them before a clinician starts, checking in with providers. It's very impressive when I learned how many people were on the team making sure that this continuity of care occurs, and that we continue to strive to see more patients. So it's been, I've definitely seen IRIS to stay true to their mission. So it's, as a clinician and administratively, I found that to be consistently true. Oh, and there's a question of a breakdown between clinical time and administrative time, which, Erin, we didn't touch on that already, did we? Yeah, that's a really good question. And it can be site specific in terms of when and how much administrative time there is. I know some of our folks will have an admin break, beginning of day, short beginning and end. Some folks have a little, rather have it all at lunch break. And some folks rather just have the long appointments, tie up all loose ends and keep moving. And it's a combination of provider preference and then what works within the clinical setting. So we absolutely ask that during the interview process, how folks like their day structured, because I think that's an important part of the workday as well, making sure folks feel they have the time they need to give the care they need for their patients.
And we're right at time, so I wanted to answer this last question, which is kind of a timely way to answer it. So what are the next steps for submitting an application? You can find an application on our website, so iristelehealth.com. There's a section for careers, and gosh, there's so many good questions coming in. I wish we could answer them all. So in order to apply, you'll go in, you submit your resume, and then you'll get an email back with a link to schedule with one of our clinical talent consultants, either video or phone interview, and have a conversation there to talk about preferences. So those would be your next steps in applying. Man. If you haven't had a question answered, you can email talent@iristelehealth.com. And again, that's just the word talent@iristelehealth.com, and we'll do our best to get those questions answered. Let me see if I can get to that. There we go. So there would be the email address that you can utilize to email over the rest of those questions. We had some really great ones come in there at the end that we'd love to get answered for you. All right.
Thanks everyone for joining and for your thoughtful questions. And definitely we're happy to continue the conversation one of the most enjoyable parts of my day is when I get to talk to potential candidates. So I appreciate you joining today and thinking about Iris.
Thanks so much.